Hey, I'm Steven. Looks like we are on the verge of another trip to that galaxy far, far away. Obi Wan Kenobi, Entertainment Weekly released the stills. The trailer has dropped, and this one looks good. The question is, Star Wars fans, are we our own worst enemy? That is what we dive into this, as well as break down that trailer. But if you would first, give the like, give the follow on the socials at Stephen Lewis on the air. And let's start with Star Wars in general, man. Everybody has their love for the original trilogy, and it spawned a multi-billion-dollar franchise that's been loved for over 40 years. People were excited. There was an all-time high level of excitement in the late 90s when we found out we were getting the prequel trilogy, only to have that excitement tempered by what we got. There are people that were very divisive over the prequel trilogy, and then we got word that we were getting yet another sequel trilogy, and the way The Force Awakens dropped, for the most part, I think everybody was hopeful and encouraged about what was to come until The Last Jedi. And then followed by The Rise of Skywalker. And the one thing that I think the sequel trilogy did do, besides divide the fan base, was give people a much fonder impression of the prequels, because at least they felt a little more like Star Wars. So the franchise was in a dark place. Of course, we got some good stuff along the way. Rogue One was really good. Solo, A Star Wars Story, is actually one of my favorite Star Wars movies, and it opened up a world and introduced a lot of things that hopefully they pick back up on later. It just, because of the polarization that came from The Last Jedi, Solo never got its just due. But that's a whole other discussion for another day. We also got the series that saved Star Wars, The Mandalorian. Most people would agree it is Star Wars to the core, and everybody loves the adventures of Din Djarin and Grogu. So now we're on the verge of yet another Star Wars show on Disney+. This one is one I think a lot of people have waited for a long time. Exactly what did Obi Wan do on Tatooine for almost 20 years while he looked after Luke? Did he stay on Tatooine? Did he just live a life as a hermit? Did he have any kind of adventures at all? Well, we are going to get the answer in the form of 6 episodes on Disney Plus that air starting May 25th. But first, we got our first look at the trailer. If you have not seen it yet, give it a watch right now.
The fight is done. We lost. Stay hidden.
The key to hunting Jedi is patience. Jedi cannot help what they are. Their compassion leaves a trail. The Jedi Code is like an itch. He cannot help it. Where is he?
There is a lot to unpack there in just a minute and 45 seconds, starting with the stuff I loved right away. You get the amazing first shot. You get Duel of the Fates. That's the music that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon fought Darth Maul to. You get the broken down Obi-Wan Kenobi, where he even says in the voiceover that the war is over, we lost, or the fighting is over, we lost. So we find Obi-Wan, according to Ewan McGregor, in a pretty dark place. He's on Tatooine, and we see that shot, of him from a distance watching over a young Luke Skywalker, which is exciting. It's stuff that we kind of knew was going on, but I think the other thing that we're getting is we definitely see that Obi-Wan is going to go off-world. A lot of the stuff in there, it looks like Obi-Wan is working a normal day job. There's a scene where he's on a public transportation, kind of going in and out of the city. I don't think it's Mos Espa, which is where the Book of Boba Fett was based. This looks more like Mos Eisley because it's closer to the Lars homestead. Speaking of the Lars homestead, we get Joel Edgerton back as Owen Lars, and I think one thing this series is going to do is kind of show us where that riff between the two of them comes from, because the only time we get to see them interact is at the end of Revenge of the Sith, which is arguably the best of the prequel trilogy. We see Obi-Wan drop off Luke Skywalker for Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru to care for them. And they just have kind of a brief interaction, so you got to wonder what happens over the course of that next 20 years, and why in A New Hope does Owen essentially call old Ben just a crazy old hermit and want Luke to stay as far away from him as he possibly can. What was the division there? And it looks like we get a little bit, because it looks like Uncle Owen seems to be getting involved in some of the action, at least that takes place on Tatooine. We get to see a lot of stuff from other shows. There's a lot of tie-ins to the prequels with this. There's also a lot of a tie-in to Star Wars Rebels, which if you haven't seen Rebels, it's a great show. There's a lot going on in Rebels, and it's where we're first introduced to the Inquisitors. The Inquisitors are those guys that we see the red lightsabers with. The female is Reva. She's supposed to be one of the main characters. We don't know exactly where her allegiance lies, but she is supposedly very, very hostile and very deadly with the red lightsaber. And then, of course, the Grand Inquisitor we got a taste of on Star Wars Rebels. This time around, he is played by Rupert Fiennes. He was voiced in that series by Jason Isaacs from Harry Potter fame, but he looks a little bit different. They did a good live-action shot of him, and the Inquisitors are these guys that they are employed by the Sith, essentially. They're Force sensitive, so they can use the Force, they can wield lightsabers. They're just not full-blown Sith yet, because the rule of two. There can only be two Sith at one time. Some of that voiceover in the trailer, are we getting a little bit of Palpatine there? I don't know. We're definitely getting a more world-building show than what the Book of Boba Fett is. We're seeing a couple of different worlds, including the one with water, where that's the Grand Inquisitor headquarters, I guess, situated there. We're seeing that planet that the director calls has a Hong Kong vibe to it, so we're going to see an entirely new world there. And then, of course, we're getting some Tatooine as well. The other thing that I loved is Obi-Wan was always fond of riding long, live creatures and not spaceships. He never liked spaceships or space travel. He preferred living things, as evidenced in the previous episodes, and we get to see him riding essentially the same creature that he rode at the end of Revenge of the Sith. So there's a lot of stuff there. We see an old, weathered Obi Wan Kenobi, and he kind of looks like something is going to draw him back into the fray, and a lot of that is it because the Inquisitors are coming after him so they can find Luke? Do they know about Luke yet? That we're not sure of. According to the plot rumors, a young Jedi that heard Obi-Wan's message to stay away kind of seeks him out and then brings him back into what's going on. There's also a lot of rumors that he's going to have to go off-world to rescue a young Princess Leia. And then there's the whole Darth Vader thing. You hear Vader breathing at the end. Hayden Christensen is coming back. Both he and Ewan McGregor have said that we are going to get round 2 of that lightsaber fight, which is good because we're going to get more of that New Hope throwback where he says, when I left you, I was but the learner, now I am the master again. So we'll see some of that. You know, does the high ground come into play? But one thing we are getting is Hayden Christensen in the Darth Vader costume. We're also supposed to get maybe some Clone War flashbacks to an Anakin before he was burnt to a crisp on Mustafar. We don't get to see Obi-Wan ignite his lightsaber in this, but I'm pretty sure that is coming. So interesting to see where this one goes. Now, the problem with Star Wars is the fan base is its own best friend and its own worst enemy. And what I mean by that is everybody was super excited when we got the Book of Boba Fett, but then a lot of people hated the way the Book of Boba Fett went. A lot of people just decided that this, and I think part of the problem was it takes a certain capacity of person to do Star Wars. Part of that being from a directorial standpoint. There are some, Favreau, Dave Filoni that get it extremely well. And then there are others like Robert Rodriguez, who their vision of Star Wars, along with Rian Johnson's, doesn't just necessarily fit the narrative of what we wanted. Robert Rodriguez did a great job directing the Mandalorian Season 2 episode with Boba Fett, but the series on a whole, it was the wrong tone, I think, that he brought into Tatooine. And I think the problem that we had with the Book of Boba Fett was that they tried to do kind of a Western theme, which fits pretty well for Tatooine, and turn it into a mafia type deal, which would have probably played better on Coruscant. But either way, Book of Boba Fett introduced us to a lot of stuff and a lot of other characters, and it was good to see them answer certain questions about that character. So now with Obi Wan, what are we going to do? And where the problem lies is we've had about 40 plus years to kind of in our own heads imagine what Obi-Wan was doing for those 20 years. There's been a few comic books here and there that explain a little bit about it, but exactly what are we going to get, and is it going to be a letdown? There are certain characters that probably could pop up in this timeline. Obviously, this takes place before A New Hope. I believe this is set about 10 years before A New Hope. So right in that time frame that Solo is taking place. So do we get a Han Solo cameo in this? Do we get some of those other characters like Darth Maul is still alive? This obviously takes place before the episode of Rebels, where if you haven't seen it, Obi-Wan does put an end to Darth Maul once and for all. So he could stop by, considering that they've also introduced that he's kind of a bit of an intergalactic gangster at this point, and Obi-Wan is going off-world, so we're getting that. The Cassian Andor series, Cassian was one of the main characters from Rogue One. He's getting his own spin-off. It's taking place before the start of the Rebellion, which fits into this timeline, so do we get a Cassian Andor appearance to set up his series down the road? Possible. Ahsoka Tano is floating around right now. Does she interact with Obi-Wan and know where he is? Yoda is still very much alive at this point in time, so is there some kind of communication between Obi-Wan and Yoda? But the big one is Qui-Gon Jinn. Is Qui-Gon Jinn going to talk to Obi-Wan Kenobi to teach him how to become a Force ghost if he ever passes away? All that stuff's in question, and I think the problem that you have is if it doesn't, we as fans kind of imagine what we want to see, and if it doesn't happen, then we get overwhelmingly disappointed. I think a lot of people wanted to see a Han Solo cameo, like a young de-aged Harrison Ford in the Book of Boba Fett. We did not get that, unfortunately. Would have been cool, but we did not get that. So I kind of put that up there with everybody wants to see Liam Neeson come back. Are we going to get that? We don't know. What we are getting so far is a pretty cool-looking first look at Obi-Wan Kenobi. Ewan McGregor said he and Hayden Christensen got together during the pandemic and just walked in a park and talked. They hadn't seen each other for years, but they're still very close. And they're both tied to the fact that they will be forever recognized as Obi-Wan and Anakin. So what we're getting looks pretty cool so far. I love that John Williams is back to do the score. I like where they're going with this. There's a lot of stuff that they can do. Are we only going to get 6 episodes, or will there be a season 2? It's going to be fun to watch Ewan McGregor step back in to that role and play Obi-Wan again. So did you watch the trailer? What do you think? Are you kind of a little bit disappointed that we might not get everything we want, or are your expectations set a little too high, or are you just happy like I am to have a venue where we can watch Star Wars shows like The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and Obi-Wan Kenobi? We will all find out together on May 25th, so drop your opinions, your comments in the space below. Have a great day, and since it is a Star Wars discussion, may the Force be with you.